Hyped versus Amaz. So far, I'd say I think the first match was pretty interesting with the way that the lineup was selected by Masan versus Zixos.
Yeah, his lineup, I think, did exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted the target aggression. He drew the right cards, and when he draws the right cards, he's going to punish aggressive strategies. In 6-0, maybe he was a little bit stubborn by queuing up Mech Mage as many times as he had to, but you have to win a game with Mech Mage when you're playing Conquest. You have to win with each one of your decks. So, to see him queue it up 3 times in a row, not the biggest deal in the world. Sometimes you're just going to lose, especially again with the way that this is structured. Your opponents know they know what they're going against in terms of their opponent. They can build their lineups as such, and that's exactly what Masan did.
Yeah, and I think Zixo's decision to try Mech Mage against the Druid at the very end to get at least that tiebreaker point. If the Warlock would have lost, at least the Mage has gotten a tiebreaker point against Masan. So moving on to Hyped versus Amaz. Hyped is going to be bringing Druid, Mage, and Warlock, where Amaz will have Druid, Mage, and Hunter. So there's 2 classes overlapping for both players. They're both going to be sharing that specific class, but then again, different Druids exist in the metagame and different Mages exist in the metagame, albeit Mech Mage has been excessively dominant.
Yeah, there's also, this is sort of what you see too with growing card pools, is you're going to see different variations of every single class. They're not just going to be falling into the same one. Certain ones will obviously always be in favor. That's just sort of the way the numbers work. You have to have one that's played more than the other unless they're literally equally played, which just isn't going to happen. But I don't really know how this lineup is going to work. Again, it's really, I think a lot of this is going to come down to how these Druid decks are built. But something interesting to note about Hyped is that Hyped has not always just been like a Mech Mage player or a Freeze Mage player or what have you. He's played a lot of different kinds of Mage decks. I want to say it's his second most played class.
I would say so.
Yeah, but this is back before GVG, of course, but he was playing what a lot of people called Hyped Mage, where it had like Twilight Drakes in there, and it was duplicates eventually found their way in, and it was really just kind of based around high value Mage cards that wanted to extend the game for a long time and keep heavy control.
Yeah, so and the way the deck worked, essentially, it's kind of like is the ultimate mid-range Mage, I'd say, right? Where Mech is a more aggressive of mid-range deck. That one was a little bit more on the defensive side.
Yeah, it was way on the defensive side. Again, it fought so hard for control of the board, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him playing something like that. Tempo Mage is something that's come out pretty recently, and while I haven't seen it really perform in tournaments yet, I certainly have seen it perform against me on ladder. And sometimes unstable portals can get a little bit nuts. I don't really know if unstable portal is a really Hyped kind of card. He really likes consistency in his games, but it wouldn't be surprising to see him playing it because again, it could just be so powerful.
Well, Reynad and Tempo Storm, they're both in the same team, said it was the most broken card in GVG. So by default, Hyped might be might be willing to play the card in his deck. I'm curious to see, though, what's going to be happening. We know that Hyped is going to be starting the match with the first game, that is, with his Warlock, and Amaz is going to be using his Hunter first. And depending on what the matchups, depending on what the decks are, because Hunters have also built, they're very polarized. Very polarized. They're somewhat polarized. They're still both quite aggressive, but there's the mid-range Hunter and the hyper-aggressive Hunter in the metagame right now.
Yeah, I played against Amaz on ladder yesterday, and he was playing Savannah Highmanes in his Hunter deck, and he also had Freezing Trap in there, so I'm guessing he was trying to practice for this match specifically, so wouldn't be at all surprised to see him play that. Plus, there's also the Law of Highmane, which Amaz put into effect himself, which says if Savannah Highmane attacks a player, the player that got attacked by Savannah Highmane loses.
Yeah, I used to always say that, and I don't think I've been wrong about twice because of really amazing top decks on my priest part, but so far it's pretty much been hyper consistent. The moment the Highmane hits face is because the opponent's behind on board, and he really just can't handle what's there. On Hype side, though, playing a Warlock, there's so many variants of Warlock that exist. Obviously, Zoo, I would say, is kind of out of the picture, but as far as the mid-range Warlock that we've seen, Demon Lock and its kin, and the Hand Lock.
Weird Lock.
Yeah, like Weird Lock, Hybrid Lock, Mid-Range Lock, call it what you will, but it's all this, Nerubian Egg, Defenders of Argus, Power Overwhelming, Shadow Flame, there's a core there that you see a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him play that because it is, again, one of the pretty strong decks against stuff like Mech Mage. A lot of Mech Mage has a known weakness to that specific Warlock just because they pack double heal bot, they've got the Earthling Farseer, sometimes they get really good board wipes, just like Blade Flurry and Rogue. They can get really sick board wipes with Power Overwhelming.
Not only that, but it's just sort of like, again, it's really Hyped style, which is to play games that give him opportunities to make lots of decisions.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of the guys out there that makes better ones, and he can do it very consistently and he can do it throughout the course of many, many turns. So he probably feels like the more decisions he gets to make, the better chance he has to win. So bringing something like that absolutely would not be a surprise to me. And of course, you know, we said that you'd be really surprised if he didn't bring a rogue. Well, get hyped, because hyped does not have a rogue in his lineup. Neither does Amaz. And once again, I feel like knowing who your opponent is going into the match is drastically affecting the way these players are building their decks.
Well, the interesting part is maybe Hyped was playing around, getting played around, because if he brings a rogue and his opponent is playing 3 hyper aggressive decks, you know, Hunter like, you know, a Face Warrior. You know, you bring Face Warrior and a Hyper Aggro Hunter and another, you know, hyper aggressive deck, and you're going to be rolling over a rogue. There is no way she can get that Tinker's Oil before you rush her down. So all you have to do is, if you want to beat Hyped, if he brings a rogue, you just bring Face Warrior and Face Hunter, and you're going to be eventually, in the Conquest format, getting to that rogue point, and he has to win with that rogue, but he won't be able to beat those 3 decks of yours. So you throw away the first 2 games, and then you just steamroll from there.
Yeah, looking to not get targeted in your lineups is something that's really big in Conquest right now. Even in the EU versus CN event, I was watching that yesterday. What looked like it was a really common strategy was for someone to have a lineup that can, you know, pretty easily go 0-2 to some stuff and then 3-0 whatever your opponent's last deck was. And with a player like Hyped, you can almost always count on him bringing Rogue. And so to see him do something like this, I mean, I guess when you really delve into it, it's not a big surprise. But again, he's just played so much Rogue. I mean, this is sort of like his like, all right, you got me. I can't just let you target my Rogue deck 3 times.
Yeah, that's pretty much what Show did. I think the first 2 weeks, Show is he plays Control Warrior an incredible amount of times on stream. It's probably one of the decks that he's most known for, kind of a parallel to Kit Kats more recently. And he's played that deck so much, but in the first 2 weeks he didn't bring it, and in the third week he did, and he got targeted for it by Firebat, who punished that specific decision of his. So if you're going to be, if you know that you've got a really predictable play style, which is true of some players, you know, some players are recognized as always bringing the same deck. Some players are recognized as, you know, wide, they'll play a wide range of decks. I'm thinking of Kalento here as probably a really good example of that. He'll bring pretty much anything. You know, you can't really pin him on a specific archetype that he's going to bring and nothing else. You can probably discount stuff like Zoo from his lineups, but in general, he can play just about anything, so pinning him on a deck and bringing 3 decks to counter that specific one will not happen. Whereas Hyped and Show, on the other hand, very much different.
Yeah, like, I mean, you pretty much nailed it on the head there. A lot of players are known for playing singular classes, and so a format like this does force them to kind of go outside of their comfort zone and make sure that they know what else they're working with.
Yeah, a lot of people do point out that weakness of Conquest. You know, the whole 0-2, 3-0, 3-2 kind of reverse sweep that you can plan for. That's a weakness of the format, but once players adapt to it, then that weakness is suddenly not as big a deal.
Well, you can say it's a weakness, but I think it really creates interesting dynamics.
It does.
When the big reason behind it is because a lot of times, not that this is the best strategy by any means, but it's certainly a strategy that you have to consider. And when that's happening, you really have to think about, should I be bringing decks number 2, 3, and 4 that my opponent's predicting I'm going to be playing so I can't get targeted this way? And in effect, sometimes a worse strategy can actually be a better strategy because of what your opponents are going to be doing. That's sort of the beauty of the game in general, is that worse cards can sometimes be better, can be better cards than the ones that are actually really good. There have to be bad cards that are actually bad in order for there to be bad cards that are actually good. There has to be bad cards that are actually bad, so there can be bad cards that are actually kind of good. And that's really the big deal. I think you're seeing that highlighted more in Conquest than anything else. Game 1 with Hyped and Amaz about to get started. Oh boy, the Archon Tempo Storm rivalry! Ah, I love it. I want to see more of it.
Yeah, we're about to get into the game here. The screen will show for the viewers in a second. So it's going to be Warlock versus Hunter. It's looking like mid-range Hunter, as you did mention, the High Mains and Freezing Trap making their trademark appearance here in the starting hand of Hunter. And looks like a weird lock from Hype side.
Yeah, you nailed it on the weird lock side. Again, it's just sort of, it's such a hyped thing to do, to play a Warlock deck that is just not going to be aggro based. Like, aggro is not his thing. He really likes to make decisions, and tough ones at that. But if there's a guy out there who can do them, it's him. You know, that being said, Hype really doesn't have the best tournament resume in the world. He's gotten second place at what was the one that it's like a week ago.
The Elite Invitational.
Yeah, that thing.
He was there.
Yeah, he got second place at that. And then outside of that, he just really hasn't done much. What he's really known for is his strong and consistent ladder play. I mean, this guy absolutely crushes it on ladder. In the very first season of the BlizzCon qualifiers, he had his account at #1 and #2 at the end of the season. Two accounts.
Play queuing into himself right at the very end. If he were to make a game, he would have queued into himself.
No, that's not how. That's not.
No, that's not how he got it. But if he had queued up, he would have ended up playing against his own rogue, probably rogue versus rogue.
That was when Miracle Rogue was just absolutely dominant, man. Talking 4-mana Leroy was not kind to high level strat.
Definitely not.
I had to play it myself. I was like, gosh, I hate this deck. But once the thing about it is, it started losing for a bit to Hunter, and then when it was like when South Sea Deckhand kind of, you know, when you figured out that it countered explosive traps so you could Leroy him to death at the end, you were like, oh my gosh, Miracle's broken again. Because you often didn't have 2 mana to do it. Like turn 9 was really a big focus for that deck, so you very rarely had 2 mana to invest into popping the dagger, then playing Leroy, and then shadow stepping it twice. But you very often had 1 mana because, of course, you're going into turn 9. Sometimes you get to turn 10, not that big a deal. But Hunters just, they pressured you so much you had to have that 1 extra turn to be able to do it. And then sometimes you needed to, like 2 Leroys would have ended it. So like on turn 7, for say, the South Sea Deckhand did such a perfect job of popping the traps for 1 mana that was really what put Rogue over the top back then.
All right, so King of Beasts making a show here in Amaz's hand. I'm not exactly sure how happy he is to see that. I mean, it's not a terrible one. You're getting a 5-drop. It's like a bad Fen Creeper. If you've got Beast, however, it gets a tiny bit better. I never thought I'd say there's such a thing as a worse Fen Creeper, but there is. It has been designed.
Bad Fen Creepers are always what I want to have in my deck.
Yeah, me too. I put 5 of them.
Web Spinner puts every beast in your deck, even Iron for Grizzly and Silverback Patriarch.
Mostly Silverback Patriarch, which is OP, by the way. Just ask Fire.
Alright, gotta take the Shredder here. I think he's really happy to see a what I would consider a very average minion out of piloted Shredder.
Yeah,
but, you know, these 1-power minions, I mean, these aren't really getting it done.
They don't do much. They can't kill a Mad Scientist, but he's got a really, I said an edge on this board at this point. But Amaz's hand is exceptionally strong curve-wise. He's got really convincing hand right now. I mean, Shredder now and then Belcher. You could even bow now if you feel like removing some of the stuff that's already there.
Yeah, I think he's got a bow. I mean, he really, really needs to take out this Nerubian, I think.
Yep, wow, it's gonna go down.
Yeah, I mean, investing it this way is fine. Also, you know, he doesn't want freezing trap to trigger on a 1/4. So it makes all the sense in the world that he's keeping that from happening by using his Mad Scientist instead. Here, like the way he played this actually is really, really smart. He still gets to kill this Nerubian next turn.
Exactly.
I'm sure Hyped doesn't really want to kill this Mad Scientist, and even if he does, it's going to throw off his curve. So he's gonna kill it this turn, and unfortunately, now he has to deal with. Oh, and he esports rolls it 4 1/1s. And look at this. Hyped is so comfortable with the start that Amaz has had that he's aware that this is so likely to be freezing trap. You know, he saw a web spinner. You know, he's seen a relatively slower start than what I think you would normally see, and that makes him so comfortable in not running into something like explosive trap.
And the interesting part about this play is that, you know, of course, Hyped, he knew he was playing into Juggler Unleash, but those are 2 specific cards that your opponent would have, and if it was a freezing trap, you stand to gain a hell of a lot more than you otherwise would if it's not that. And he can still deal pretty well with this board. I mean, you've got a Void Caller. The moment one of that dies, you're getting either the second Void Caller, or I guess you could get back your little Imp, which would be a little unfortunate. It's unlikely, though. It's a 66% in the favor of Doomguard and Void Caller at the moment.
Have you ever gotten the Imp off of Sense Demons? The useless Imp?
I have, the Worthless Imps, yeah.
Yeah, the Worthless Imps, that's what it is. Did I say Worthless Imp?
You say useless, but honestly, I don't blame you because they are useless. Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, if you got Mal'Ganis out, they're pretty good, yeah.
True.
Maybe you can Sense Demons. Oh, that's a perfect Sense Demons. You put only 1 demon in your deck, Malagos, and you get a demon to go with it.
Yeah, and then you play double Imps for free because it costs 0, right?
And you're creating extra cards too, so you're not going to go into fatigue as much.
Wow, that's genius.
Yeah, we just made the best Warlock deck ever, I think.
Well, people life tap. I don't life tap. I just play Sense Demons.
Yeah, I don't even use the Warlock Hero Power. It's not very good.
Yeah, I think it's bad.
Saving 1 health here. He's saving the health on his ooze because he doesn't want to get mortal coiled.
Oh man.
So that's certainly something to be thinking about. But you know, this is the script that Noxious wrote for us earlier, which is if you have 7 mana and you have Dr. Boom instead just automatically gets played to the board.
It seems to be pretty consistent so far in the tournament. I mean, sometimes you'll see it. There are moments where that doesn't seem to happen systematically, but so far I'd say this is almost word for word what I expected. Now those boom bots with the knife juggler, again, you know, the same thread we had earlier. What if the knife messes you up? What if?
God, that's such a weird position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what the best play is. Maybe you just let it happen. You're like, you know what? I'm believing in the heart of the cards here. I don't think that boombot's gonna hit my guy.
The last guy who said that
Yeah,
wasn't around
okay.
to speak about it.
I think. Oh, I mean, with the way that this turn was played, it looks like he's just gonna go for face damage.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that line of play. He's playing hard into Shadow Flame, and he knows it. But at this point, can you really blame him?
Yeah, I mean, you can see Amaz was like visibly uncomfortable with the way he had to play this turn, but I think this is his best bet. I mean, he could have killed Dr. Boom, but it leaves him with so little on the board.
So what about you play Imp, Void Caller here for 7 mana, and you have a Power Overwhelming on the back end that you can use on one of your minions, and then the Doom Guard's guaranteed to come out of your current Void Walker, Void Caller that is.
I mean, it looks strong, but he may favor life tapping here instead. But you know, he just saw the face pressure coming, so he's definitely taking that into account right now. You can see Hype shaking his head a little bit. He doesn't like his turn very much.
Yeah, I think both
This
players
board
don't
tension-
like their turns.
Yeah, I mean, this board tension is really, really building right now. You know, both of them trying to think about cards like, what am I going to do if X happens?
Well, Unleash has got to be out of the range of Amaz, because he would have played that a long time ago if that had been the case. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's one of the things he can probably pretty for sure conclude is that Unleash the Hounds is not in his hand right now.
Yeah, but what about double kill commands? You know,
Wow,
that's
you know
really
what? That's
problematic.
actually power overwhelming on a boombot. It's actually really interesting because it's going to affect the way that the end of the turn ends up functioning here.
This is exactly the play that I really wanted to see from Hyped, and I'm liking the place taking. Uh-oh.
Oh my! And it's a useless hit on the knife juggler too. It hit the boombot. It's already going to die no matter what.
Now this Void Caller again.
Seriously?
Oh
wow! And then he goes for face. Oh, and the boombot goes for face for only 1.
Okay, now Amaz can't get lethal from here. He's got only 8, 10. He's got 13. That's it. At the very most 13. And now he's got to deal with this board. But when the Doom Guard comes out, how do you feel?
That's
Void Caller.
I'm actually curious about that. Is how much he's going to weigh into account something like Mal'Ganis or something like Doomguard. You know, he's only got 2 cards in his hand, so he may feel comfortable just kind of killing him.
Yeah.
Void Caller is such a scary card. I hate killing it.
Yeah, especially in the early game, you know, when it gets coined out, you don't know if you just lost the game for yourself, if it pops out exactly the worst minion. Mad Scientist coming out, that wouldn't be too bad if there hadn't been a freezing trap already.
Yeah. I wonder if he's got another secret in here, actually. Or if it's just 2 freezing traps.
It's probably the 2 snipes and the 2 misdirections, I think.
2 misdirections. 2 snipes!
Yeah, of course.
I played snipe once.
I like the emphasis on once. It was a pretty well designed emphasis there. Alright, so he's gonna pop everything and try to get as many good knives as he can, but
oh my
are
gosh.
they gonna work? And they do work. Wow.
Well, one of them didn't work. It went into the 3/3 Void Caller. I think it's the only one he didn't really want to hit. If he knew that Doomguard is in hand, that might have changed his opinion a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm not exactly sure what you do from here as a Maz. You've got to be careful, but at the same time, can you...
Go for the silence.
Okay. Oh, the Doomguard does come out.
I'm curious if he silenced the wrong one, maybe.
Oh, Shadow Flame. Wait, is that good enough?
No, it's not enough. But
Wait, you attack... Oh, wow, that's... I never thought I'd say that, but King of Beasts is really helping out right now.
yeah, it's like Fen Creeper's actually doing work right now.
Oh my god,
You
what
said
is
Fen
happening?
Creeper, and you said it was a bad Fen Creeper. I think this is a great Fen Creeper.
Actually, it's not gonna do anything anymore. Is this real? I think it's real. Actually, you could Shadow Flame Blood Mage. You attack with this, then you Blood Mage Shadow Flame the Blood Mage.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what he's gonna do.
Or you could play Egg, Blood Mage, and then Shadow Flame the Egg.
For one. Oh,
It would kill. Yeah, it would do pretty well.
yeah. I don't know if he actually wants to kill the Mad Scientist right now. I mean, that actually
It
maybe
wouldn't die. It
He gets a
wouldn't die
4/4 off of it too, so he actually, I mean, that might just be a. Oh no, he doesn't have enough mana to do that. What are we talking about?
Yeah, well, never mind.
Yeah, so he's gonna Shadow Flame Blood Mage instead. We're stupid.
You could Shadow Flame the The Blood Mages get really good value out of it, which also, by the way, for those who wonder, the Blood Mage's spell damage applies to its own death on Shadow Flame. It's very important that people realize that.
Amaz the worst card in his deck, the other mad scientist. He doesn't have the freezing trap's the only, I mean, that's the only one. It's the one in his hand.
So you have to play Eagle Hornbow, kill the Void Caller, and then play Freezing Trap to prevent that Doomguard from doing anything, but it's so
really
horrible.
know. I mean, like, what can he, is there anything he can draw for lethal? So he plays
Boom. you just draw Dr. Boom and you stall it.
He takes his opponent down to 11, and then he has an attack for 3. So he can only take his opponent down to 8, and he needs one draw to deal 8 damage. So I think you're right. He's going to have to start clearing stuff here. But the Doomguard, just going to be back in his hand.
Yep.
It's going to cost 7 mana, but I mean, Nerubian Egg and Defender of Argus are good ones, but after that, you know, what if Hype doesn't have anything that's really worth anything in his hand? He just gets a Doomguard again. This is an awful position.
Yeah, it might go both ways still. I mean, I would say the Hype was slightly favored, but in this position, it could go. By the way, Amaz is just going face, allowing the Doomguard to get the damage in, but he's threatening lethal, possibly, if the top deck line up. Well, that Defender of Argus is finally going to get the value that Hyped wants desperately.
And I don't think... Do you think he life taps here? I don't think he does.
No.
Like with the play your opponent just made, he's obviously, you know, hoping for a long shot here. But I think you can even take that possibility away by just not life tapping. Or help take that possibility away.
I mean, you've seen 2 freezing traps at this point, so what is the Mad Scientist really going to do, even if it gets popped? So you just drop everything you've got with Defender.
Yeah, he knows there's another secret. The last Mad Scientist didn't get a secret. Does he Defender the Haunted Creeper here? Oh, but what about Unleash the Hounds then?
Yeah, you could really just get with the Nerubian Egg. That way you have even more damage next turn. If a 4/4 pops out, then you get the lethal off of your board.
And he just wants extra damage too. Yeah, I'm afraid that Amaz probably has no way to get back into this game again. I mean, this is going to need a miracle draw. And it would have to be a card that's basically just not even in his deck. Probably ever. So Hype's going to take this first game, man. That was, I mean, it looked like it was that one turn where there was 4 minions on each side of the board was such a weird turn in how things had to pan out, because he's having to take into consideration the boom bots. He's having to think about, you know, his next draw and how that could possibly affect Void Caller stuff. Like, so many things could have happened differently that it's hard to really figure out the best line of play because you only have like 90 seconds to do it, and there's so many different possibilities.
Yeah, it's really just about, and the thing is, Hyped had a lot of lines of decisions during this game, but not as much as usually Warlock does, because Hunter will put his, you know, the health down on a clock, and when you don't find the heal bot, then life tap is out of the question. And a lot of the time, what ends up happening when you don't get those lines of play, you know, multiple lines of play as that specific type of Warlock, you're kind of pigeonholed into dropping minions on the board to just contest it, which leaves you very vulnerable because you can't get that healing as soon as you want it. You can't get those big demons as soon as you want them. So that was a really nicely done game here for Hyped and Amaz. Unfortunately, it was just this close, I think, for Amaz. Would have really made a huge difference if things, you know, an earlier Unleash the Helms would have made the game completely different. Not
drawing the other freezing trap would have really made the game different.
Yeah, free trap.
The bad scientist that got spawned off of the piloted shredder.
It was irrelevant, essentially.
Yeah, it was just a 2/2 body. I'm sure it was a lot scarier for Hyped though, because he's like, if I kill this mad scientist, he's gonna get trapped, and he's like, oh, he didn't get a trap. Oh, perfect. And then he drew the other mad scientist. So brutal.
He's got to be pretty happy about that. And now we're gonna be seeing the next game of this series. We're gonna be having Hyped's, you know, his Warlock is out of the way, so now he's gonna be moving on to one of his next decks. And what I'm really curious about is how it's gonna pan out against the Hunter, because Mech Mage is not exactly known for being necessarily the best deck against Hunter. It's not a horrible one, mind you, but those games are generally coin flips. I call them coin flips on a personal note.
I mean, it's definitely, I don't think it's that Hunter's the best matchup for it. But sort of, I've had a lot of different success with this matchup, and sort of something I think may be throwing a lot of people off is that when Mech Mage wins this matchup, like against something like, you know, for instance, let's say Face Hunter, for instance.
Yeah.
When I beat Face Hunter with this deck, it always feels like it's so close. I mean, it's like down to the last few points of health on both sides. But I felt like I've won the matchup very often. And so I feel like because it's so close every time that you beat it, and because when you lose to it, you basically just get blown out of the water, that it could be affecting the way the matchup kind of feels from an experience. It's like, unless you're just actually tracking every single game that you play and like what you played against and the win percentages, it's much harder to have, you know, an accurate guess as to what's going on. versus if you're just going based on feel. Because based on feel, it just always feels like you won the game and you're like, oh, that was lucky to win.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the old, the zoo versus zoo. It was a 50-50 every single time, but the player who won generally won by a complete snowball. And that's kind of the same thing for these two classes. Sometimes one gets the edge very early, and the other one has no mechanism to recover from it. And it feels like a complete blowout a lot of the time. Well, this Make Mage hand is not terrible, but you've got to be a little careful with how you extend into this. And I like the Harvest Golem from Hyped here. It's not a card we've seen too much in Make Mage recently. It seems to have phased out a little bit. It used to be a staple, but got a lot of people just decide not to play it, I guess.
Yeah, Bo's a pretty good one here too.
Yeah, I'd say it's as good as it's gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, that's given his hand, it's probably the best draw in his deck. Maybe Animal Companion could have been a little bit better, but I would still doubt it. I mean, this gives him a weapon to help fight against the next minion. Hype's hand definitely just got a lot better with that draw. Like, if he draws a 4-drop next turn, I think that Mech Warper is going to be looking pretty darn good.
In the meantime, do you just play Clockwork Gnome Tinkertown, or?
I mean, that feels like it's going to be the best value you're going to get. He may really, really value pinging here, though, which is also very, very reasonable. I mean, you want to try to... In the way that this game has gone, it's obviously turning into a bit of a grind. So every time that he gets a hero power and it's not really, making him have a stagnant play, he's going to be happy to do it. And Amaz continues to draw no minions. And honestly, it's kind of weird because the first one he wants to draw is something that isn't very good, so he can get rid of this mirror entity. Because he can't just play the Savannah Highway on turn 6 when the mirror entity's down. He has to actually draw like a bad minion.
That's gonna be dangerous. Yeah, you just can't play those. I mean, even Sludge Bell, sure, you're not feeding a mage. When your deck contains stuff like web spinners, are you really gonna play Highway into mirror entity? There's no way at all. The interesting thing is the freezing trap is still there though, so the moment Hype does get a board, it's gonna get denied right away.
Yeah, so it's kind of curious that Amaz chose to attack with the bow here, even though he had the trap out, and really what he's thinking about is how much Goblin Blast Mage might break this game wide open.
Yeah.
And that's why he chose to attack, to sacrifice the potential for an additional bow draw. But a 3/3 Tinkertown Technician, I mean, this almost feels like enough. Amaz is probably going to have to kill command either
Hunter's Mark, I guess you could.
Yeah, Hunter's Mark or kill command either the Knife Juggler or the Tinkertown Technician this turn. He's going to start falling really far behind. But Hype's hand isn't very good too, and you could see that he was really uncomfortable with his draw. He drew second Frostbolt. I mean, they got to do something. They got to do something. You can't just not play minions. Yeah,
this is gonna be a really grindy game. I mean, you can play Knife Juggler and Kill Command, and Hunter's Mark. So you can play those three and then get a really good Savannah Highway next turn. And I feel like that might be the line of play to take if you really want to stick something on the board that's not gonna get answered immediately.
Yeah, you'd have the freezing trap down too. It just doesn't feel very good to Hunter's Mark at 3/3.
Yeah,
you have
but
5 mana open.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Hype has even the second mirror entity though, so cup half full sort of thing.
Is he just gonna let? You could also just let the freezing trap do his job, right? Because there's no mech, so the blast mage is out of the question unless Hyped has both blast mage and a mech in his hand.
Oh my gosh, Hyped draws Fireball. He has no minion play this turn. But again, cup half full. Amaz only has 1 minion play, and I can tell you it's not going to be Savannah Highmane if this mirror hits the board.
Yeah, exactly. Another secret drops down, you can bet Amaz is not going to play into it. He wanted to. He set up a really good turn last turn from his perspective, but in this case, it's not going to do anything. And the 3/3 is going to be able to come back next turn to contest this board. Actually, he doesn't even bother.
Yeah, he doesn't want to attack with it just quite yet.
Well, what's the reasoning? I'm wondering, because you can't even attack into a minion anyway, right?
He doesn't want his opponent to play the other freezing trap, maybe, is a possibility.
Okay, second one.
Yeah, and then the other one is because again he has the mirror entity on board. If Amaz plays a worse minion, he can use that to trigger the freezing trap instead.
Oh, this is going to be a good Tinkertown now that the mech is out. He's going to be able to replay it and get a spare part. It's going to cost quite a little bit, and he might not do it immediately if he doesn't feel like it, but I feel like this is a good one.
With the Annoyatron draw, I think he's very comfortable sitting behind. Oh, wow. He's actually not going to play the Annoyatron this turn. So he's looking for a favorable trade on the Pilot Shredder instead. So,
and that's a really favorable trade.
It's about one of the best ones you can get. I'm trying to think of Vitality Totem, Flame Tongue Totem.
Pieces of 8. Yeah, I guess Vitality Totem would be the best, though, but... Yeah, 0/3 I think is as good as it's gonna get. Is it a 0/3 or 0/4? I keep forgetting. I've just
Vitality is 0/3, and Flame Tongue is 0/3 also. I think all the castable totems are 0/3. I wonder if people would play Spell Power Totem if it was like a 0-mana 0/2 with +1 Spell Power.
I would play it. Everybody would. If it was a neutral class card, and everybody could do it. Like,
no,
I
like
was
if
trying
it's
to.
a Shaman class card, of course.
Oh, I think they would. Getting it with Lightning Storm is such a necessary part of your play, right? Like you play Blood Mage Thalnos, not even for the draw. You just want that cheap spell power on turn 5. So I think people would definitely at least consider it.
Really thinking about not trading into this, which I actually don't mind. I mean, I like the face damage. I think 4 damage to face is totally cool. I mean, this isn't threatening either one of your minions right now. It's not a beast. I don't think that you're expecting Amaz to play like Dark Iron Dwarf or Shattered Sun Cleric or Defender of Argus, anything like that. So,
and if he does, you give it to him.
Right, and the other thing too is he's been holding on to these 3 cards for quite a while now. I think he's safe to assume that one of them is I made. Whoa, that is certainly a different one. This could very easily backfire though.
Choose over champion. That's a good one.
What's the other one?
It's got 3 durability. I'm gonna say Cogmaster's Wrench. Take your bets. Take your bets. I don't see anything but the durability. Stormforged Axe. Could be that.
I think those are the only 3 health weapon or the 3 charge weapons in the game.
Could there be another one that I'm not remembering? Possibly. It is a Stormforged Axe.
Yeah, it's a Stormforged Axe. 50-50, you got it wrong. What bad RNG?
Yeah. All right, so that's a really threatening board. I mean, your Hyman is...
No, he's fine.
Oh, yeah, he's totally fine.
He's only facing down lethal damage with, just a few options.
Yeah.
Stormforged Axe.
I think the way to do this is you get Demon Heart, you buff your Mistress of Pain to gain health.
How does he get a Demon Heart? He just draws it. What's that bug when you're in Spectator and like you can draw and it's the Warlock card?
Yeah, I had a
0 mana with 0/0.
Yeah,
that happened like 10 times at the Gfinity event, and I was like, "Come on, this bug is so rare. I've never seen this." And it just kept happening over and over there.
Well,
maybe it's a European bug.
What do you do here in this position? I mean, you attack with the Mistress definitely, but it doesn't heal you because
I think he might have to. I mean, he might have to silence his own spin high man just to prevent him from dying.
Attacking something. Yeah,
he's looking at 4 damage across the board. I mean, if Fireball's there, he's just dead anyway.
Yeah.
But
Kill command, silence, juggler, basically. Well, juggler, silence, or.
There's the freezing trap. There's the knife juggler, and I seriously think he's gonna silence.
He's not doing it, but I really believe he should have done it.
I don't know if he should have either way. I mean, he's dead to just fireball as it is.
Yeah,
so
which is our champion.
Oh, he's just dead on board. Oh no, he's got the freezing trap. I don't know if this. Does he actually win the game this way? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? I don't think there's any way Amaz can really win this game. We're just debating semantics at this point.
Yeah,
Hike is going to get a 2-0 lead. And I mean, Amaz is drawing really, really poorly with his Hunter deck so far. He's drawn a trap in his hand both times, which is something that you basically never want to draw. You'd much rather draw the Mad Scientist. He had Kill Command early that game. The mirror, he had to give his opponent a piloted shredder off his mirror entity rather than something like a web spinner or a haunted creeper. It just kind of everything went wrong for him.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the first time these 2 players faced off in the tournament, so I don't know if they're really prepped for the other player, maybe not having... I mean, I don't think they've ever met so far, right, as far as I'm aware. So, being the first game, they might not be too familiar with the other player's playstyle from a direct experience, so maybe that could play a little bit into this, but Hype's lineup is now, Mage is out, Warlock is out, that leaves him with a Druid, one of the most consistent, well-rounded classes, and... Amaz also has a Druid, so at the worst for Hyped, in this specific, the next 3 potential matches, there's at least going to be a coin flip. If he doesn't win against Hunter and Mage, obviously. Mid-range Hunter is typically pretty good against Druid, depending on how they get the early start. If the Druid gets the Wild Growth with Keeper of the Grove and denies the early board presence, that can be different. And Mech Mage also has a pretty good matchup, so there might be a way for Amaz to equalize, and everything could come down potentially to a 50-50 on the Druid mirror match.
This is Hearthstone, man. Anyone can always come back. You could come back from a 0-49 deficit if that ever happened. I mean, the other guy had to win 49 games in a row. I mean, maybe you can top him and win 50 in a row. But, being down 0-3 is not a comfortable position to be in. There is still... Luck of the draw still exists, and you could just as easily have bad luck. So, preparation obviously is usually the biggest deciding factor in terms of winning Hearthstone events. The player who's the most prepared I feel like has usually been the one who's won tournaments so far. Yeah. And back against the wall, and Druid's not the kind of deck that I want to try to 3-0 against, because it's so reliant on like the Druid drawing the right cards versus you drawing the right cards.
It's a more interactive. Miracle Rogue because they essentially play solitaire, but not really. Because, in fact, they have to interact with your board to somewhat of an extent. Then at some point, they just go full aggression gears, and then they play, the combo to finish you off. Or at least they dig for it with Ancient of Lore, which is... I think this is probably the reason Druid is so successful is they have those, like, each class has those unfair cards, right? Which makes them viable in Constructed. If you look at Savannah High Main for Hunters, for instance, every deck needs to have some cards that are, overtuned somewhat, and that makes them really, really strong in Constructed.
I agree. Priest does need something that makes it a little overpowered. Because you said every class has those cards. But
well, you mean Repair Bot's not that? I thought the new Repair Bot was just...
The best priest card is Wild Pyromancer.
Yep, and it's not. What if it was pre-specific though?
It wouldn't change anything. It would just it would still be the priest card as Wild Pyromancer. It gets played in other stuff, but it's very rare, I think, to see that card outside of priest. I've definitely played it in other classes before, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that do play it. It's actually like in something like
Paladin.
Shaman. In Paladin, for instance, and in Shaman, it's a pretty good substitute for something like Blood Mage.
Mm-hmm.
It will give you an extra damage on Lightning Storm a lot, which is kind of what you're looking for an effect like that. So Wild Pyromancer, it's not like unplayable, but like in these high-level competitive plays where everyone has comprehensive card pools, it's just not played that often, and it really Priest is where it finds itself. But just this matchup, I don't know what Amaz is going to go with here, but I'm going to venture to say he's playing Mage again because that's what he's done pretty much every time, and that's kind of what I see people do in Conquest is when they lose a game with a deck, they just play it again because they have to win a game with it anyway.
Yeah. I think Hunter is probably a bit more consistent in general against Druid, so that's probably going to be... Hunter and Mage both are excellent choices against Druid, but Druid has an easier time of recovering versus a Mage board. They get the swipe on the Blast Mage, whereas the Hunter's mid-range, the mid-game of the Hunter is a little bit more tricky to deal with. The Shredder is played, you swipe that, and the possible 2-drop like a Mad Scientist. You end up with a lot more sticky situations against a Hunter as Druid than you do against Mage, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Amaz go for his, Hunter again against Hype's Druid.
Yeah, it really wouldn't surprise me either. Yeah. There's only one way to find out, though.
All right, we are being told, actually, that Hyped is going to be playing his Druid, obviously, and Amaz is going to be picking Hunters, so we're going to be entering the game very, very soon, and we'll see the end result of that. It's a really tough, you can't really predict those. Those games can be stolen away by the Hunter very convincingly. If there's no high main answer effectively in the Druid side, it's going to be a complete blowout.
Yeah. Sorry, these players have just gotten ready now, and we're heading into Game 3. It's match point for Hyped, and man, Amaz's got to win 3 games in a row. This is such a brutal position to be in.
Yeah, but I was casting a tournament recently, and the class that swept systematically was Druid, so there's really a possibility there that... this is not the position that I want to be in as Amaz. It's one of the worst classes to have to reverse sweep.
Ragnaros in hand already for Hyped. I don't think he's gonna hang on to that one, but I'm curious to see if he keeps the
Keeper and Dr. Boom. You keep Rag, you mulligan Keeper and Dr. Boom, and you get 2 innervates, and you're good to go.
This is the true definition of YOLO Rag, is if he keeps the Wild Growth and mulligans the other 2, and he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna get 2 innervates. Yeah. Oh wow, come on, Hyped. Look, he got 1 innervate. If he draws the innervate, he's gonna regret this.
Yeah, I would too. You could even play Dr. 7 on, as Dr. 3. Dr. 2 even with the coin. Oh my goodness, Dr. 2.
Next time I have Wild Growth and Ragnaros in my hand, I'm just going to have to keep both of those and hope I draw 2 innervates. I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life if I don't do it. Next time I see it, I'm just going to have to do it.
Yeah, you're going to be called Admiral Balls after that, because that's got to take some serious guts.
Wow, look at this hand. This is such a weird turn now for Hyped, because he has options for everything. He's going to make this pretty darn quick, and I think when you see turn 2 Freezing Trap, you could be a lot more comfortable with this. But this really throws off this Wild Growth now. Like it's almost like you regret keeping it because you drew Zombie Chow, and then because your opponent Freezing Trapped it, you feel so much more comfortable playing Piloted Shredder. And once again for Amaz, he gets, basically one of the worst draws that's possible. He drew both Mad Scientist, great, but then he also drew 2 Freezing Traps. So those are just 2 mana 2/2s.
Yeah, it feels almost worse because you want to use them as tempo plays. In Hunter, when you end up not using them, and he gets Huffer, which is probably the worst possible outcome here when Keeper of the Grove risks coming around with a coin, and that's exactly what happens. Amaz is so far behind.
I think Leok would have been a little bit worse,
right?
Because he wouldn't have gotten anything out of it, but it's still pretty bad.
Yeah, there's very, very few outcomes here would have been good for Amaz at this point of the game. You really want to find some kind of way to put pressure on the Druid, but when they do find... Oh, and Millhouse Mana Storm comes out. I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks. I don't even know how he's supposed to deal with that gnome.
Oh my gosh, everything is going wrong for Amaz. You know, typically Amaz has been, in my opinion, one of the luckier players that's out there. It seems like he almost controls it at times. What has happened this match? He has not gotten him. He just can't get a break.
Also, I would like to point out, Hyped's horrible, and I totally mean this, you know, totally honestly, horrible positioning here on Shade of Nax, not playing around the very, very common explosive shot. I don't know why you ever would. Yeah, this is terrible, isn't it?
If he plays that one to the left of Millhouse Mana Storm, this is, it's got to be a disaster.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen here. I mean, Amaz obviously plays 2 shots.
He's really thinking about killing one of these mad scientists, and then proccing the freezing trap with something else.
And then you play Millhouse.
Right. So well, the very I don't think it's going to be the Millhouse that procs it, but the very first one of these mad scientists he's going to attack is going to commit him this, and what he's going to find out with this attack is that there's just no freezing trap.
Yeah, and he's going to feel very comfortable going forward just about any line of play, right? It doesn't even matter at this point, and he's going to go for the swipe.
Yeah, he was going to swipe there. And he
didn't see a trap.
And he's like, wait a minute, there's no freezing trap. I can do whatever I want.
And he is smiling right now. He had a really nice smirk on his face. Yeah. You could see the satisfaction saying, oh, you're Hunter.
Oh,
bad draw.
It's so brutal right now. I don't even think Savannah Jaime can get her out of this one.
Well, maybe the Savannah Jaime rule would not stand for this one. Because you can just go face at this point.
Look at Hyped. He's even kind of shaking his head. He's like, I can't believe it. This is the 3rd time he hasn't gotten a trap from a mad scientist. And in this game, he didn't even get one from the first one. Is this enough damage, by the way? 4, 8, 11, plus 8? Yeah, it's just enough damage.
It is lethal,
yeah, he just has lethal. Wow.
Well, this is the most convincing Druid win against a mid-range hunter that I've ever seen, personally. And I think we all have to blame the mad scientists for their unfortunate show-up with the freezing traps. Wow, 3-0 from Hyped versus Amaz in this series. First time they ever play against each other in a tournament setting. That's devastating.
Hyped almost, he's smiling, but he almost kind of has that, you know, I really feel bad for him kind of thing going on right now. It's like you could kind of see it in his body language. He's like, oh, come on. I mean, let's at least play a game. That's so unlucky for your opponent to just never get traps on their mad scientist. And you know, initially, really early on when I evaluated mad scientists, this was kind of what I was picturing, is that sometimes you were going to draw your trap and not be able to activate them. But it just really does not happen as often as I think that I thought it was going to. And then even when it happens, sometimes it's just really not that bad. In this matchup, it was really highlighted because he's playing mid-range mage. I'm sorry, because he's playing mid-range hunter, and he really needs the tempo off the freezing traps for it to happen. And something like mage, when you draw your mirror entities, it's really not that bad.
Yeah.
You know, you can still get minions off of mirror entities, but in this matchup, when you don't draw, when you do draw your freezing traps and your mad scientist, it's so brutal. Like drawing one or the other, okay, but when you draw both, what can you do?
Yeah, it's one of the big weaknesses, I guess, of the mad scientist. But honestly, it works out so much more often than it doesn't. So we're gonna be going into, after this match, Amaz is gonna play again after losing to Hyped here. He's got another match versus Orange. Now they faced off against each other in IM Katowice, so they're gonna face off against each other again. Orange, with the confidence boost, I'm sure will be playing a lot better now, because in the past 2 weeks that he's played in Kinguin Pro League, he's taken very interesting lines of play that really didn't work out for him at all. Very risky, very unusual, and not exactly optimal from a kind of a broad perspective. Then we're going to be going to Colento and Life Coach, and then Trump versus Reynad, and finally Hyped versus Dog. So we're going to see more of Hyped today, and that should be kind of interesting. You know, more of those decks from him.
Yeah, I'm curious, does he have to play the same ones versus, he gets to change his decks versus Dog, right?
Yeah, he's get to change every single, between matches they get to play. Otherwise, I mean, the metagame would be very stale for the entire duration of the league, and I mean, I wouldn't be even...
Well, I was thinking because it was the same day, maybe, but yeah, maybe he will play the same decks, though. Maybe we'll see Rogue later on. Maybe we'll see the exact same lineup he had here.
Yeah, so we're going to be going for a 10-minute break, guys. We'll be right back after the break for another match. We're going to be casting Amaz versus Orange, so if you're an Amaz enthusiast, stick around. We'll be right back.